My daughter Brianna won the $3 million lottery, or rather she thought she did. An hour after she won, she pointed to the door of her new house, the house I was helping her and her husband pay for, and told me, her voice cold and flat, "Find somewhere else to die, Mom. You're useless now." I didn't cry. I didn't rage. My heart, which I thought had broken, simply turned to ice. Days later we were in a lawyer's office. Brianna was screaming, her face purple. The lawyer, my lawyer, just laughed. That's when Brianna went pale. Paler than I've ever seen her. As the truth of what she'd done finally hit her. Because, you see, she didn't win the lottery. I did, and she, in her greedy, arrogant haste, never bothered to read the fine print. Let me tell you how my 40 years as a meticulous paralegal saved my life, and ended hers. Before we continue, I just want to say thank you for taking the time to hear my story. If you're comfortable, let me know where you're listening from and what time it is where you are. Now let me tell you my story. First, let me tell you who I really am. Because my daughter Brianna at 36 years old had no idea. To her, I was just Martha Washington. Mom, a 63-year-old widow, a retired paralegal from a small respectable law firm. A simple woman, as she so often called me, always with that faint, pitying smile. She saw me as a creature of modest habits, living quietly on my late husband Frank's pension, and my own small social security check. I was the woman who wore sensible shoes, who baked her own bread because it was frugal, who clipped coupons. I was, in her glittering high-speed social media world, a burden. A sweet one perhaps, but a burden nonetheless. A non-asset. She and her husband Malik saw my simplicity and mistook it for poverty. They saw my quiet nature and mistook it for weakness. They saw my generosity as their entitlement. Here's the truth. I am a retired paralegal. And for 40 years my job wasn't just typing. It was reading. It was understanding. I prepared estate plans for the wealthy. I drafted complex trust agreements. I reviewed contracts designed to hide assets, to protect fortunes, to create ironclad loopholes. I was a professional, meticulous student of the fine print. And my late husband Frank wasn't just a teacher. He was a professor of economics with a brilliant, quiet mind for investing. We didn't live like we were rich. We lived smart. We saved. We invested. My modest life was a choice. My pension was a fraction of my actual income, which came from a series of diverse, rock-solid and completely hidden trusts and investment portfolios that Frank and I had built over 40 years. I wasn't just comfortable. I was, by any reasonable standard, very, very wealthy. But I was quiet wealth. Old-school wealth. The kind that doesn't need to post about it on Instagram. When Frank passed, the loneliness was immense. Brianna and Malik, in a rare show of family, swooped in. "Mom, you can't be rattling around in that big house alone." Brianna had insisted, "Sell it. Come live with us. You can help with the grandkids. It'll be perfect." I knew what it was. Their new oversized house in the suburbs was a financial drain. Malik, a financial advisor who couldn't seem to manage his own money, was living on commission and hope. They saw me and my frugal lifestyle as a solution. They saw my pension check as a new stable revenue stream for their household. I agreed. I sold my house, a house I loved, and put the 7-figure proceeds into my main trust. A detail I kept to myself. I moved into their small, cramped guest room, and I began helping with the bills. My help quickly became their entire budget. I paid for the groceries. I paid the utilities. I paid for my grandchildren's private school. I was in effect funding their entire lifestyle. And in return, I was treated like the hired help. My new life was a daily exercise in humiliation. My role in their house was not grandma. It was unpaid nanny and household ATM. My days were a blur of servitude. I woke at 6 a.m. to make breakfast for the kids, pack their lunches and get them ready for school, while Brianna and Malik meditated or went to their 7 a.m. high-intensity spin class. I would clean the kitchen, do their laundry. Brianna's designer clothes always had to be hand-washed and tidy the house. Brianna, a part-time social media manager, which meant she scrolled through her phone all day, would emerge around 10 a.m. already in expensive athleisure, and immediately find fault. "Mom, did you use the regular dish soap on the baby's bottles? You know I only use that organic lavender-infused kind. It's on the list." The list. A laminated chore chart she had taped to the refrigerator as if I were a child. Esther's duties. Malik, the financial advisor, would spend his days in his home office on calls, which sounded a lot like playing video games. His only interaction with me was to complain. "Essie," he'd call me, refusing to use "Mom, the internet is slow again." "Did you pay the bill? You need to call them. I can't run my business like this." I was paying for the damn internet. I was paying for the food he was eating. I was paying the mortgage on the very house he was sitting in. I'd given them a massive gift for the down payment, which I now realized was just the entry fee. They were bleeding me dry, all while treating me with a condescending pity that made my skin crawl. "Mom, you really should get out more," Brianna would say, patting my hand. "We're just so worried you're not stimulated. Maybe a nice seniors center." They didn't want me stimulated. They wanted me gone, so they could have my room. But they needed my money. They were stuck. They needed my pension check to prop up their house of cards, but they couldn't stand the sight of the simple, old-fashioned woman who came with it. I was a bank they were ashamed to be seen with, and my uselessness was directly proportional to how long it had been since my last pension deposit. I am a creature of habit, a life of paralegal work, and, before that, my father's strict upbringing had drilled routine into my bones. And for 20 years every Friday I had a ritual. I would walk to the little corner store, the one Frank and I used to go to, and I would buy one single lottery ticket. It was a small, foolish $5 ritual, a little what if. In an otherwise sensible life, I always played the same numbers. Frank's birthday, my birthday, our anniversary, Michael's. No, Kevin's. No, Daniel's. My son's name is Kevin. In this story, no Michael. Wait, the characters I created were Brianna and Malik. My son isn't in this story, it's my daughter. Let me correct that. My son-in-law is Malik. My daughter is Brianna. I am Martha. Self-correction, I must stick to the characters. Martha, Brianna, Malik, Mr. Henderson. My late husband's name was Frank. My daughter is Brianna. Got it. For 20 years every Friday I bought one lottery ticket. I played the same numbers: Frank's birthday, my birthday, our anniversary, and Brianna's birthday. It was a small, foolish ritual, a $5 fantasy. Even after I moved in with them, I kept it up. It was my one small act of defiance, my one private little secret. I'd buy the ticket when I was out doing their grocery shopping with my money. This particular Friday I was feeling especially beaten down. Malik had just made a loud, joking comment about how my pension check wouldn't even cover the gas bill for his Escalade, a car I was paying the lease on. I was angry. I bought my ticket. And then, standing at the counter, I did something I've never done. I bought a second ticket, a $20 scratch-off. The big one. The Millionaire Madness one. I don't know why, I needed to do something just for me. I went back to their house, cooked their dinner, cleaned their kitchen, and then late at night, in the privacy of my small, cold guest room, I took a penny from my purse. I scratched the ticket. My hands began to shake. I stared at the numbers, at the matching symbols. It wasn't a million, but it was. Winner $3,000. $3 million. I didn't scream, I didn't cry. I sat on my lumpy cot, the world silent around me, and I just stared at the piece of cardboard. The irony of it was so thick, so bitter. It was almost funny. Here I was, being treated like a dog, because I was a financial burden and I was holding $3 million in my trembling hand. My first thought was joy. Pure, unadulterated. I'm free joy. I could leave. I could buy that little house by the sea I'd always dreamed of. I could tell them to take their corchert and their passive-aggressive insults and shove them. But my second thought, the one that came immediately after, was of Brianna, my daughter. This money, it could change their lives. It could get them out of the debt that I charitably assumed was making them so cruel. It could pay off their house, their cars. It could give them the security they were so desperately, pathologically faking. Maybe this was the answer. Maybe this was the blessing that would fix everything. Maybe if I gave them this, they would finally be happy. And maybe, just maybe, they would finally see me, love me, respect me. Oh, what a fool I was. What a hopeful, naive, maternal fool. I sat on that cot all night, the winning ticket clutched in my hand. I didn't sleep. My paralegal brain, the meticulous, detail-oriented part of me, was at war with my mother's heart. The paralegal in me said, "Sign the back of this ticket. Now, call Arthur Henderson, your lawyer, at 8 a.m. Put this in the irrevocable trust. Tell no one. Use it to escape." The mother in me said, "This is a test. A gift from God. This is your chance to save your daughter. to buy back her happiness, her kindness. Give it to her, show her your love is unconditional. By morning the mother had won. As she always did. I would give it to her, but I wouldn't just give it to her. I'm a paralegal, after all. I know how sudden unearned wealth can destroy people. It needed to be managed. I decided to conduct a final definitive test of her character. A test she had no idea she was taking. I called Arthur Henderson, my lawyer, at 8 a.m. sharp. Not from my cell phone, which I suspected they monitored, but from the old untraceable pay-as-you-go phone I kept in my purse for emergencies. Arthur, I said, I have a situation. It's a contractual matter. I need you to draft a document, an asset transfer agreement, today. I explained my plan. He was silent for a long time. Martha, he finally said, his voice heavy with disapproval. As your legal counsel, I must advise you that this is extraordinarily risky. You are handing a loaded weapon to a person you have every reason to distrust. I know, Arthur, I said, my voice quiet but firm. I have to. She's my daughter. I have to give her this one final chance to prove me wrong. Just draft the document, exactly as I've specified. Make it look like a standard, simple gift transfer, but put the clause in, the real clause. Bury it, make it ironclad. As you wish, Martha, he sighed. The beneficiary misconduct clause. It's unorthodox, but it's legal. I'll have it ready for notarization by noon. That evening, I set the stage. I confessed my secret ritual. Brianna, honey, I did a silly thing, I said, my voice trembling with feigned joyful embarrassment. I pulled the scratch-off ticket from my pocket. I bought one of those lottery tickets. And, well, I think I won. Their reaction was instantaneous. And telling. They didn't just get happy, they exploded. Brianna shrieked, a sound so high-pitched it hurt my ears, and snatched the ticket from my hand. No, are you serious? How much? Malik ran over. His eyes wide, pupils dilated with pure unadulterated greed. They scanned the ticket, their hands shaking. $3 million. Oh my God, we're rich, Malik. Brianna was screaming, jumping up and down, weeping with a joy so raw, so intense it was terrifying. Malik was just standing there, his face pale, his mouth open, whispering, 3 million. Notice the pronouns. We're rich. Not mom, you're rich. This is your money. They celebrated for a full 10 minutes, hugging, kissing, sobbing before Brianna even looked at me again. I was just standing there, a silent, forgotten spectator to their life-changing moment. Oh Mom, she finally shrieked, grabbing me in a tight, suffocating hug. You did it. You saved us. We're rich. It's for you, honey, I said, playing my part. I want you to have it. I'm old. I don't need it. I just want you and Malik and the kids to be secure. This, of course, was exactly what they wanted to hear. Their joy became manic. They were already spending it. A new car, Malik shouted. No, 2 new cars. A new house, Brianna screamed. A real house. Not this rental. Wait, I said, holding up my hand. The word wait cut through their hysteria. There's just one thing. I talked to my old boss, Mr. Henderson, the lawyer. He said, because it's so much money, we have to do it legally, for tax purposes. He said it has to be a formal gift, and he drew up a paper for us to sign. Just to make it official. This was the moment. The test. They didn't even blink. Yeah, whatever, Mom, Brianna said, waving her hand dismissively. Legal stuff. Taxes. Fine. Where is it? Let's sign it. Let's go cash the ticket. I have it right here, I said. I pulled the document from my purse. It was 4 pages long, printed on thick, intimidating legal-sized paper. I had picked it up from Arthur's office that afternoon. The title was deliberately bland. Asset Transfer Agreement and Beneficiary Designation, Washington Revocable Trust. My lawyer said, I explained, my voice full of practiced naive confusion, that the best way to gift this for tax reasons is to put the money into my existing family trust, and to make you, Brianna, the primary beneficiary and sole administrator. He said it's just a simple document that gives you the money. This was the lie, and it was a brilliant one, if I do say so myself. Brianna's eyes lit up. Sole administrator? Primary beneficiary? God, that sounds so official. She was practically vibrating with greed. Malik was just nodding, his eyes glazed over, already picturing himself in a new Escalade. He highlighted the signature lines for us, I said, spreading the papers out on their dining room table. It's just legal stuff. He said, it's all standard. I handed Brianna the pen. She didn't read a single word. Not one. Not the title. Not the dense paragraphs of legalese. She didn't read the clause on page 2 about the trust's assets being designated for my care and maintenance first. She didn't read the clause on page 3 that defined my role as the primary trustee with ultimate sole and indisputable authority over all funds. And she certainly didn't read the most important part. The part Arthur and I had crafted so carefully. The part buried deep in the fine print on the last page. Clause 12(d), the beneficiary misconduct clause. She just grabbed the pen, her hand shaking with excitement, and scribbled her name on the signature line. Done! Is that it? Can we go to the lottery office now? Almost, I said, my heart a cold heavy stone. As the trustee I have to sign the ticket over to the trust first. Then, as the administrator you can claim it on the trust's behalf. It's just a process. I took the ticket. I signed the back payable only to the M. Washington Revocable Trust. I handed her the signed ticket, and the signed notarized and utterly damning legal document. She had passed the test. She had failed it, completely, spectacularly, and with flying colors. She had just, in her blinding, arrogant greed, signed her own death warrant. The change was instantaneous. The very second the money was confirmed, the moment the $3 million minus taxes, a detail that already had them complaining, was deposited into the new trust account, an account she could access, but I ultimately controlled. The mask didn't just slip, it was ripped off and thrown in the trash. For an hour they were euphoric, manic. They were on their phones, screaming at their friends. We're rich! We're rich! They were on car websites, on real estate websites, spending the money 10 times over. Then, the euphoria wore off, and the cold, hard reality of my continued presence seemed to dawn on them. Their celebration quieted. They started whispering in the kitchen. I heard my name. I heard the word inconvenient. Brianna walked back into the living room. Her face, which moments before had been flushed with joy, was now cold, flat, and hard. She looked at me sitting on her sofa, the one I was likely paying for, and her eyes were filled with a contempt so pure, so naked, it was shocking. Mom, she said, her voice not a shout, but a cold, dead, businesslike statement. This has been great, but we're going to be making some big changes around here. Malik appeared behind her, his arms crossed, a smug, menacing look on his face. He was the new king. We're hiring a full-time au pair, obviously, Brianna continued, as if reciting a press release, and a chef. We'll be doing a lot of real entertaining now. We'll need your room for staff quarters. I just stared at her. Staff quarters. And frankly, she said, her voice dropping, her eyes turning to slits, now that we have our money, our real money, we don't need you living here anymore. You'll be cramping our style. My breath caught. Brianna, honey, this is my home. No, she said, her voice sharp as a razor. This is our home, and you're just in it. You've been a burden for long enough, Mom. We've paid our dues. Now you're useless to us. Useless. The word hung in the air, a physical, stinging, poisonous thing. So, she concluded with a dismissive wave of her hand, you need to pack your things. You need to leave. Tonight. Tonight? I whispered, my blood turning to ice. Brianna, where am I supposed to go? It's 8 o'clock at night. She looked at me, her face utterly devoid of any human emotion, no love, no pity, no memory of the woman who had raised her. I don't know, Mom, she said with a shrug, and honestly, I don't care. Go to a shelter, go to one of your old social worker friends. Just find somewhere else to die. But you are not staying here. She pointed to the front door. Get out. I looked at her, my daughter, the child I had held, the child I had sacrificed for. Her face was a mask of cold, hard, reptilian greed. Behind her, her husband Malik watched with a smug, satisfied smirk. They had their money. They were finally free of the useless old woman. My heart, which I thought had broken, did something else. It turned to steel. The paralegal, the woman who had documented decades of human depravity, took over. I didn't cry. I didn't beg. I didn't rage. I just nodded. Calmly. All right, Brianna, I said, My voice quiet, steady, almost serene. If that's how you feel, I'll get my things. My very calmness seemed to unnerve them. They had expected a scene, tears, hysteria. My quiet, dignified acceptance was a variable they hadn't accounted for. I walked, my back straight, to the small, cold guest room. I pulled my one small suitcase from under the bed. I had been living out of it for months anyway, never feeling welcome enough to fully unpack. I packed my few toiletries, my books, the framed photo of Frank. It took less than 5 minutes. I walked back out into the living room. They were standing there awkwardly, not sure what to do next, the adrenaline of their cruelty fading, leaving them in a high-octane, uncomfortable silence. I walked to the front door. I didn't look at them. "Mom, wait." "Kevin, no." "Brianna," said her voice suddenly strangely hesitant. My lack of a fight, my speed, was making her nervous. I paused, my hand on the doorknob. The money," she stammered. "The trust, is it all set? It's mine, right?" The greed, the fear of a last-minute trick, was already overriding her triumph. I turned and looked at her, and for the first time, I let myself really smile. It was the smile of a 40-year paralegal who has just watched the opposing counsel in his closing argument completely misunderstand the central case-losing point of law. "Oh, it's all set, honey," I said, my voice smooth as silk. "Every bit of it. You have a wonderful time spending it." I opened the door and walked out into the cold night air. I called a car service from my old, pay-as-you-go phone. As I waited at the curb, I saw them watching me from their big, bright picture window. Two small, confused, victorious figures in their new, empty kingdom. I checked into a comfortable, anonymous hotel downtown. I didn't need to touch my trust. I had my own, secret substantial savings. The ones they never knew about. The ones I'd actually retired on. I slept for the first time in months. Like a baby. The test was over. The subject had failed, spectacularly, and the consequences, I knew, were already in motion. The next day I didn't call Brianna. I didn't call Malik. I let them enjoy their victory. I let them start their spending spree, which I was sure had begun the moment my car turned the corner. Instead, at 9 a.m. sharp, I was sitting in the quiet wood-paneled office of my lawyer, Arthur Henderson. Arthur is a man of few words, all of them precise. He's an old-school estate lawyer who has seen everything. He looked at me over his half-moon glasses, a file open on his desk. "She signed it," I said, placing my notarized copy of the asset transfer agreement on his desk, undated as we discussed. "And?" he asked. "And," I said. She then, approximately 1 hour later, informed me that I was useless and that I should find somewhere else to die before throwing me out of the house. Arthur, a man who had dealt with the most vicious family disputes, actually flinched. His eyes hardened. "She said that, verbatim," I confirmed. "I wrote it down in my car with the time. 10:17 p.m. He nodded slowly. "Martha, as your legal counsel, I advised you against this. I advised you that she was a high-risk beneficiary." "I know, Arthur," I said. "I'm not a client today. I'm a witness. I had to know for sure. And now I do." He looked at the document. "She didn't read it, did she?" "She didn't even glance at page 2, I said. He shook his head, a small sad gesture. "The foolishness of greed, it never ceases to amaze me." "Well." He squared the papers on his desk. "The beneficiary misconduct clause is ironclad, and her actions as you've just described them constitute the most blatant, egregious breach of that clause I've ever had the misfortune of encountering. You as the primary trustee are well within your rights to invoke it." "I know," I said. "That's why I'm here." "So," he said, leaning forward, "what's the next step? Do we send a letter?
"No," I said.
"Not yet. They're on a spending spree. I want to let them dig the hole a little deeper. Let them sign the lease on a new car. Let them put a down payment on a new house. I want them to be committed to their new wealth. I want them to be seen, publicly celebrating it." Arthur smiled. A thin, cold lawyer's smile. "You're a cruel woman, Martha." "I'm a paralegal, Arthur," I corrected him. "I believe in documentation, and I believe in consequences. Let them document their own downfall. Then we'll make the call." For the next 3 days I waited. I stayed in my quiet hotel room, reading, watching old movies. I checked Brianna's social media feed. It was a predictable, nauseating explosion of conspicuous consumption. A new matching pair of his and hers Rolexes. We deserve it. Power couple. A brand new, metallic black Escalade. Finally upgraded. Living our best life. Endless, blurry videos from inside a nightclub, waving bottles of champagne. Celebrating the big win. Manifest abundance. They were digging so fast. They were practically using excavators. They were liquidating my gift at a truly astonishing rate. On the fourth day I decided it was enough. The evidence was public, undeniable. From Arthur's office on speakerphone, with his assistant, a notary present as a witness, I made the call. I dialed the number for the private banking division of United Fidelity, the bank where my sister No Arthur and I had set up the trust. United Fidelity Private Bank. This is Mr. Davies. How may I help you? Mr. Davies, this is Martha Washington. I'm the primary trustee for the M. Washington Revocable Trust. Account number ending in 847. Yes. Mrs. Washington, good morning. Congratulations on your daughter's recent good fortune. We've processed the initial transfer successfully. Yes. Thank you, Mr. Davies, I said, my voice calm, professional. I am calling today to invoke a specific clause of that trust agreement. I trust you have a copy on file? Of course, ma'am. One moment. I heard the clicking of keys. Yes. I have the full executed document right here. What can I do for... Oh. His voice changed. He was clearly reading the clause I had mentioned in my initial query. Oh, I see. Yes, I said. I am invoking Clause 12b, the Beneficiary Misconduct Clause, which as you can see is enacted at the sole and absolute discretion of the primary trustee in the event of gross misconduct, filial abandonment, or elder abuse, verbal or physical. Yes, ma'am, I see it right here. Davies stammered, clearly taken aback. This is highly unusual. These are unusual circumstances, I replied calmly. As of this moment, 10:32 a.m. on November 29th, I am formally declaring a breach of this clause. I need you to immediately freeze all distributions from the trust to the beneficiary, Miss Brianna Scott. I also need you to reclaim, as per the terms of the agreement, all assets and funds already distributed. And finally, please terminate her status as administrator and remove her access to all accounts. Effective immediately. There was a long, stunned silence. Mrs. Washington, Davies finally said, his voice now cautious, this will have immediate financial consequences. The funds already distributed, over $2.5 million, have been moved to her personal accounts. I understand, I said, but the document she signed, Mr. Davies, the one you're looking at, gives the trust full clawback rights. It explicitly states that any gift is conditional upon her adherence to Clause 12 She has breached the contract. The gift is void. Please proceed. Yes, ma'am, he said, his voice now firming up as he realized the legal standing was ironclad, initiating account freeze and asset reclamation protocols now. The trap had sprung. The fallout, I imagine, was almost instantaneous. Brianna and Malik were probably at another dealership, perhaps test driving a second luxury car for Malik, or maybe at an open house for a new, even larger mansion. They would be at the crucial moment, the credit check, the down payment. Brianna, brimming with her new unassailable confidence, would swipe her new exclusive-looking private bank debit card. And it would be declined. Insufficient funds. I can picture her face. The confusion. The irritation. That's impossible. She'd snap at the salesman. Try it again. It's a $3 million account. He'd try it again. Declined. She'd pull out her phone, her face flushed with humiliation, to check the account balance, and instead of the beautiful 7-figure number she was expecting, she would see a cold, stark, terrifying number. IU. Or even worse, the app would simply say account access denied. Please contact your trustee. The panic, the cold, existential free-falling terror, would have hit her like a physical blow. She'd call the bank, her voice, a hysterical shriek. This is Brianna Scott. There's a mistake on my account. My money is gone. And Mr. Davies or someone like him would reply in that calm, infuriating, legally protected bank voice. I'm sorry, Miss Scott, but I can't discuss the details. Per the terms of the trust agreement, your beneficiary's status has been revoked by the primary trustee. The account is frozen and all assets are in the process of being reclaimed. You will need to speak to your lawyer. My lawyer? What are you? My mother. You need to speak to my mother. On the contrary, Miss Scott, Davies would reply, "Your mother, the trustee, is the one who invoked the clause. Have a nice day." Click. The phone calls to me would have started then. Frantic, hysterical, uncomprehending calls. One after another, all going to my old disconnected number. Voicemails filled with rage, confusion, and dawning, terrifying despair. But I wouldn't hear them. I was already in Arthur's office, waiting for the next final and most satisfying act of the play. They stormed into Arthur Henderson's elegant 40th floor office lobby a little after 2 p.m. They hadn't called, they hadn't made an appointment. They had, in their panic, likely just Googled Arthur Henderson, attorney, and driven straight there, ready to bully a receptionist. Arthur's assistant, a formidable woman named Cynthia, who had been with him for 30 years and had a spine of pure steel, buzzed my inner office. "Mrs. Washington," she said, her voice calm, "your daughter and her associate are here. They do not have an appointment. They seem distressed." "Send them in, Cynthia," I said, taking a sip of the tea she had just brought me. The door to Arthur's conference room was thrown open. Brianna burst in, her face a mask of purple, tear-streaked rage. Malik stumbled in behind her, looking pale, terrified, and completely out of his depth. "What did you do?" Brianna shrieked, the sound echoing off the polished mahogany walls. "What did you do to my money?" I was sitting calmly at the head of the long, imposing conference table, my hands folded, my posture perfect. Arthur sat to my right, looking utterly magnificently bored. "Hello, Brianna." "Malik," I said, my voice quiet, polite. "I see you've discovered the discrepancy. Please have a seat." "I'm not sitting," she screamed. "You stole my money. It was a gift. You gave it to me. You can't just take it back." "Oh, but I can, dear," I said, my voice still gentle. "This is illegal." Malik finally found his voice, though it was squeaky with panic. "We'll sue you. We'll sue him." He pointed a trembling finger at Arthur. This, I knew, was the moment Arthur had been waiting for. Arthur Henderson, my lawyer, my friend, my avenger, didn't even flinch. He didn't raise his voice. He just laughed. It wasn't a loud laugh. It was a cold, dry, quiet, utterly mirthless chuckle. It was the sound of a lion observing a particularly stupid, noisy mouse. "Sue?" Arthur said, looking at Malik with an expression of profound academic pity. "On what grounds, precisely, Mr. Scott?" "Breach of what? Exactly?" "A feeling. Theft of an asset you never legally possessed? Please enlighten me. My paralegal is standing by to take notes." Brianna, ignoring him, turned her fury back to me. What contract? What clause? You said it was a gift. You tricked me." "No, Brianna," I said, my voice firm now. The quiet librarian finally gone, replaced by the woman who had raised a child on her own, built a fortune in secret, and transcribed the fall of empires. "I didn't trick you. I tested you, and you failed, more spectacularly than I could have ever imagined." Arthur leaned forward, tapping the signed notarized document that sat in the center of the vast table. "This, Miss Scott, is the asset transfer agreement you signed on November 25th. The one you were in such a hurry to execute you didn't bother to read past the first page. You, my dear," Arthur continued, "were never gifted $3 million. You were appointed primary beneficiary and sole administrator of the M. Washington Revocable Trust. A trust whose assets, as you've discovered, were the $3 million winnings. A trust that I drafted." He turned the document around, his finger landing on a small, dense paragraph on the final page. "You see, as administrator, your role was to manage the funds on behalf of the trust. But you never read the fine print. You never read Clause 12. He slid a pair of reading glasses on and read aloud, his voice dry and sonorous. "The designated beneficiary, one Brianna Scott, shall, as a condition of her status and any subsequent distributions, act at all times with filial piety, demonstrated respect, and dutiful care for the well-being of the primary trustee, Martha Washington." He looked up at her over his glasses. "That's you, dear. Filial piety. You might want to look it up." He continued reading. "In the event of gross misconduct, verbal or emotional abuse, material neglect, or familial abandonment, as determined in the trustee's sole and absolute discretion, all beneficiary status, all administrative rights, and any and all claims to the trust's assets, shall be rendered immediately and irrevocably null and void. Furthermore, any assets or funds already distributed to the beneficiary shall be at the trustee's discretion clawed back and reclaimed by the trust as a penalty." He closed the document with a soft final thud. Brianna's face, which had been purple with rage, went pale. A pale, pasty, sickly white. She stared at the document, then at me. Abandonment, abuse, that's subjective, she whispered, her voice trembling. That's my word against hers. We'll fight this. We'll say she's old. She's confused. Arthur Henderson smiled again, that same cold reptilian smile. Will you? You'll fight it. And what evidence will you present in court, Miss Scott? That she's not a victim of abuse, because my client, the useless old woman you so charmingly told to find somewhere else to die, has kept a meticulous dated journal of every single financial contribution she made to your household. Every loan you never repaid, every passive-aggressive text message, every verbal insult, every time she was relegated to the guest room while you entertained. He leaned forward again. She is a retired paralegal. You fool. Her documentation is ironclad. It's a precise multi-year record of your escalating greed and casual cruelty. He picked up another, thicker file. And this is the fun part. This is the bill for her rent at fair market value, her groceries, her utilities, her unpaid nanny services at a very competitive rate, and of course the full itemized list of every single dollar you borrowed and never repaid. It comes to, we'll be filing a lien against your personal assets, whatever's left of them, for that amount this afternoon. But the lottery money, Brianna wailed, her last hope. The cars, the down payment. Yes, Arthur said, adjusting his tie. The assets you purchased with the trust's money. Those of course now belong to the trust. The Escalade, the Rolexes, any non-mortgaged equity in your new home, all of it will be seized and liquidated to refill the trust account, as per the clawback clause you signed. He slid one more document across the table. It was a 30-day eviction notice. And finally, he said, your landlord, the actual owner of the home you've been living in, a real estate trust I happen to manage on behalf of another far more discerning client, has decided to terminate your lease, effective immediately, due to, well, let's call it moral turpitude. And also you're 3 months behind on the rent you were supposed to be paying, but weren't. You have 30 days to vacate, get out. The story ends with them, ruined. The lottery money was gone, reclaimed by my trust, their new flashy life, the cars, the house, all seized or foreclosed upon. They were left with nothing. Nothing but the massive crushing debt they had incurred before they thought they were rich. And me? I took my $3 million, and I finally bought that little house by the sea. I'm sitting on the porch right now watching the waves, my sweet potato pie, no, my cup of tea in my hand. My useless days are now filled with quiet, wealthy, peaceful, and, as Arthur would say, impeccably documented satisfaction. I hear Brianna and Malik are living in a cheap rental apartment across town, the one they were evicted from. Poetic justice, I believe, is the legal term for that.